And so the central theme in the program is competition. You're either competing or not. We're in relentless pursuit of finding the competitive edge in everything we're doing. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And we don't do stuff like everybody else. You don't want to be the best ones doing something. You want to be the only ones doing it. If we go our own path, we'll take our Raider fans with us, along the way, and hopefully we can build a really good club here.
To me, the Las Vegas are in such an unpredictable spot, and that's why in this NFL season preview, the final one for the AFC West, we're going to be asking what is the next step for the Las Vegas Raiders, because they're in a unique position in my opinion. The last couple of years have been pretty shiny for the franchise, particularly last year in the 2024 season, having a 4-13 record, finishing last in the AFC West, which resulted in them picking 6th overall in the 2025 NFL draft, drafting their running back of the now and the future, Ashton Jeanty, who had one of the all-time great running back seasons at Boise State last season, finishing 2nd in Heisman voting. In my opinion, I feel like Jeanty should have won, but that's a debate that a lot of people are going to continuously have. But Travis Warner won respectfully, so going to give him his due there. But Jeanty had an absolute insane season in 2024, had 374 carries for over 2,600 rushing yards and 29 rushing touchdowns, alongside in the receiving game having 23 receptions for 138 receiving yards. And even if you look at the season before, not nearly the same as the production last year, having an all-time great collegiate season. He fell just 27 yards short of Barry Sanders' record, having the most rushing yards in a collegiate season in NCAA history. That dude is going to provide a different type of dynamic to this Las Vegas Raiders offense that they didn't have. And we know the past couple of years they've had a different regime, at first under head coach Josh McDaniels before firing him, and then Antonio Pierce for the past couple of years on a really lame duck coaching deal, which we expected him to be a temporary stopgap solution for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now Pete Carroll being the head coach of the Raiders, I think that they're going to be able to have a new identity in terms of being a team that's going to be a tough opponent, that's not going to back down, and not going to be a soft football team. Pete Carroll, he is a proven champion. He won 2 NCAA championships at USC and also won Super Bowl 48 with the Seattle Seahawks, and made Super Bowl 49, which you can argue, of course, if he would have ran the ball instead of Russell Wilson throwing the ball in the red zone, he could have been a 2-time Super Bowl champion and a 2-time NCAA champion. But we're not going to talk about that. That brings trauma for a lot of Seahawks fans, even though this is a totally different team. But Pete Carroll signed a 3-year contract to coach the Raiders with a 4th-year option. And even though he's 73 years old and turned 74 in September, he is a coach that's very full of life, has a lot of energy, and is ready to put the Las Vegas Raiders in a great position forward to be a competitor and be a team that can compete. And if you want to look at some different stats and things of that nature too, to me it really feels like longer, but the Las Vegas Raiders were just in the playoffs in the 2021 season, where they lost a wild card game to the Cincinnati Bengals 26-19, and eventually the Bengals would go on to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl that season, even though losing to the Rams. That was the last time the Raiders made it to the playoffs, and that was a totally different regime. That was even before Josh McDaniels. That's when Rich Bisaccia took over the interim head coaching role after John Gruden was fired, and led the Raiders to a 7-5 record, clinching a wild card berth. But now the Raiders want to be able to get to the playoffs with a new type of culture and a totally different personnel and group, both offensively and defensively. I mentioned them drafting Ashton Jeanty this year, and he has the potential to be offensive rookie of the year this season, but also be one of the best backs in football from game one, and really even elevate your offensive line just because of the pure type of ability and contact balance that he has. But look at them also having arguably a top 3 to 5 tight end already in the league, and Brock Bowers, who's just going into a sophomore season in the NFL in 2025. In his rookie season in 2024, Brock Bowers ranked 3rd in receptions with 112 overall. He had nearly 1,200 receiving yards, which ranked 8th, in 5 touchdowns, averaging 10.7 yards per reception, nearly 11 yards per reception. He broke the record for most receptions and receiving yards in a single season for rookie tight ends, and he surpassed Mike Ditka's 63-year-old record for receiving yards by a rookie tight end, and broke Puka Nacua's record for most receptions by any rookie in a single season. And I think he's going to continue to build on that. I mean, he was literally an all-pro tight end in his rookie year, so really the only way is up for that. That's a scary thing for opposing defenses going against Bowers, not only in the AFC West this year, but for the 2025 opponents of the Raiders overall and going into the future. And no disrespect to the quarterbacks of the Las Vegas Raiders in 2024 and Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, but Brock Bowers put those numbers with those quarterbacks spreading him the football. So now imagine what he can do with a Geno Smith, who you can make the argument is a top 15 to top 20 quarterback in the league. And that's not a slight on him. There's so much quarterback talent. I'm not going to say that he's near top 10. Let's just be honest. But Geno, since the 2022 season, he has certainly shown that he is a very serviceable quarterback and can put up numbers. And that's going to be perfect for a player like a Brock Bowers to have even more opportunities to dominate and create in space. And same thing for an Ashton Jeanty to have a quarterback in his rookie year that knows how to handle an offense and be perfect in his cadence. Geno Smith's ascension really started in the 2022 season.
They wrote me off. I ain't right back though. That's the problem. I ain't right back. Let's go.
When he was given the reins to start for the Seattle Seahawks after they departed from Russell Wilson, trading him to the Broncos at the time. In that season, he won Comeback Player of the Year, having a completion percentage of nearly 70%, throwing for over 4,200 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. And him and Pete Carroll were able to lead the Seattle Seahawks to the playoffs that season, losing in the wild card round to the 49ers, but it was a certainly great season for him. Then in 2023, he also put up some solid numbers, even though he played only 15 games compared to the 17 that he played in 2022 and 2024, throwing for over 3,600 passing yards, 20 passing touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. So with the less games played, had a little bit lesser of a production. And I'm not gonna lie, last year he was more up and down, but he had the highest completion percentage that he's had as a full-time starter, completing 70.4% of his passes, throwing for over 4,300 passing yards. In that season though, he did have a higher amount of interceptions for sure, throwing for 21 passing touchdowns and 15 interceptions. So you'd like to get that ratio down and be more efficient. I think they're gonna do that with an Ashton Jeanty being a running back there. They're really gonna utilize the running game a lot, and Geno Smith will turn 35 later this season, so we know quarterbacks may play longer nowadays too, so you can still make the argument he has a lot of good football left in the tank. But I think just him being the quarterback for this team, unlike an Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew, he's going to be able to provide a player that has been able to lead a team to the playoffs and be a solid starter for this team. And you can make the argument that the Raiders, they should be also looking for their future option at the quarterback position in the next year or two, something like that, to learn behind a Geno Smith. But ultimately, overall, I think that Geno Smith provides the best quarterback play that they've had since Derek Carr in the 2016 season, when he had his best season of his career, finishing third in MVP voting. The Raiders also have a Jacoby Myers at the wide receiver position, who I think is one of the most solid and consistent receivers in the NFL. In his past 2 seasons with the Raiders, after leaving the New England Patriots, they've been very productive seasons. In 2024, he had 87 receptions for 1,027 receiving yards and 4 receiving touchdowns, averaging nearly 12 yards per reception. And in 2023, his first season with the Raiders, having 71 receptions for 807 receiving yards and 8 receiving touchdowns, averaging 11 yards per reception. So he's been consistent. I think that he's going to be another player in an offense that gets utilized even in a better role. At the age of 28 years old, going to be 29 in November, they're going to have the opportunity to spread the ball a lot in the receiving game with Bowers and Myers, but also be versatile, utilize Ashton Jeanty in the backfield from a rushing perspective, but I think even utilize Jeanty as a receiving threat as well too. We for sure have to mention them defensively, with a Max Crosby being one of the best defensive ends in the league. He signed him, and the Raiders this offseason agreed to a 3-year, $106.5 million contract extension with $91.5 million guaranteed. He's in his prime. He is an absolute game wrecker for that Raiders defense, and has been pretty much ever since he stepped in the league in the 2019 season, being picked in the 4th round, being an absolute gem and freak of nature as a player. In his 6 seasons, he's recorded nearly 60 sacks, last year having 7.5 sacks alongside with 45 total tackles and 17 TFLs, and he recorded all of that in just 12 games played in the 2024 season. But in 2023 and 2022, those have been his career high seasons from a statistical standpoint. In 2023, he had 90 total tackles with 14.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, and 23 TFLs. And then prior to that, in the 2022 season, he had 89 total tackles, 12.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, and 22 TFLs. So Crosby, when he's out there on the field, his impact and presence is always known, and he makes life difficult for opposing offensive lines to try to contain him, to force them to send 2, to really shift towards the entire defensive line, to make things easier for that defense in Las Vegas. But even despite that, they like to improve tremendously, because in 2024, their defense ranked 19th in points allowed, and they were middle of the pack, 15th overall in total defense, allowing 331 yards per game. So they want to be able to continue to hone and improve on that, certainly under Pete Carroll, who's a defensive head coach, but also their defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham, who's been the defensive coordinator since 2022 for this squad. So still having some continuity there. They look to have Christian Wilkins at the defensive tackle position to be utilized heavily this year, but in a bizarre situation, on July 24th, he was released, coming after really a dispute of the Raiders Wilkins to have a certain type of surgery to help heal and recover, and Christian Wilkins was unwilling to do so in a disagreement over his foot injury rehab. And also, I don't want to really mention this because this is just odd to talk about, but there's also a quote-unquote playful kiss incident that he had too that made teammates in the locker room uncomfortable. So yeah, that's another thing. But anyways, and I also love them bringing in Chip Kelly to be their offensive coordinator, who we all know was the Ohio State Buckeyes offensive coordinator in the 2024 season, helping lead them to a national championship. And I'm interested to see the type of rapport that Kelly has with a Geno Smith and how his offense looks in Las Vegas. He's been a former head coach with the Eagles and the 49ers previously in the NFL, and also was most recently a head coach for UCLA before having that OC job with the Ohio State Buckeyes. And we know from a scheme perspective, his offense is very fast paced. He uses a lot of tempo and has a spread type of attack. And it's kind of different because we've seen his offenses have mobile quarterbacks, and not necessarily saying Geno Smith is the statue, but he is going to turn 35 years old later this year. So I'm interested to see how the playbook works them together. But having an experienced play caller like that is only going to help players like a Brock Bowers, an Ashton Jeanty, a Jacoby Myers continue to ascend and elevate. With that being said though, guys, before we further break down the Las Vegas Raiders and how they're going to look in the 2025 season, answering what the next step for them is, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. Follow me on Instagram / Twitter and X at SwaggyRuss and TikTok at SwaggyRuss02 for shorts, reels, and a lot of different content like that. Podcast information soon coming where you'll be able to transcribe the audio for all of these videos that I have, not only for the NFL, but NBA and just all content that I'll have in general. You'll be able to get that on Spotify and Apple soon, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, with all that being said though, let's preview the last and final team we have in the AFC West before moving on to the NFC South, talking about in this season preview, what's the next step for the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm really even furthermore intrigued by the draft that the Raiders had. We already talked about how Ashton Jeanty had one of the best running back collegiate seasons of all time, and drafting him at 6 overall, in my opinion, is a great move, even though a lot of people have scrutinized still the past half decade or decade plus of drafting the running back in the first round, but we've seen it work out perfectly for the Detroit Lions, drafting a Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round of the 2023 draft, and same thing with the Atlanta Falcons in the 2023 draft. In that same draft, drafting Bijan Robinson. Those two have been some of the most productive backs in the league in their first 2 seasons going into their 3rd year. So I think Ashton Jeanty is going to continue to add into the fold in that type of department, being a very impactful running back to his team in the Las Vegas Raiders. But in the 2nd round, I really love them drafting wide receiver in Jack Beck out of TCU. First of all, his story is amazing, and I don't want to talk about this too much, but long live his brother Tiger Beck, who ended up passing in that horrific New Orleans terrorist attack. But I think it just shows the type of leader and persevering player that Jack Beck is adding to this Las Vegas Raiders squad because of what he's been through, and not only in that department, but coming from an LSU, for example, having the transfer to TCU and really just make a name for himself and further prove why he was one of the better wide receivers in college football, and earn the opportunity to be drafted in the 2nd round by the Las Vegas Raiders. So after 2 seasons at LSU in 2021 and 2022 where Jack Beck felt like he could have been better utilized, he ended up transferring to TCU. Only played 8 games in the 2023 season, but last year by far had his best college season, which, as I mentioned, earned him to being drafted in the 2nd round. And he had 62 receptions for 1,034 receiving yards, averaging nearly 17 yards per reception and 9 touchdowns. I think it was a perfect storm for him this season, and he was utilized great in that TCU offense. And that team had a bounce back year in 2024, going 9-4 after being 5-7 in the 2023 season. And I think he's going to be able to be a wide receiver that complements a player like a Jacoby Myers and can make the argument, even though he's a different type of receiver, being an X type of receiver at that 6'2", 207-pound frame. He's going to be able to be another weapon for this Raiders offense, and he, in my opinion, could potentially have a Lab McConkey type of impact. That's why I said that he's a different type of receiver. But for look at what the Los Angeles Chargers got from McConkey, Jack Beck could be a very productive player in his rookie year for the Raiders, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he is near or close to approaching an 1,000-yard receiving season in his rookie year in 2025. Other moves that I like that they made in the draft was, for example, them in the 3rd round drafting Darian Porter, cornerback from Iowa State, who was a really good piece for that Iowa State team that fell short in the Big 12 Conference Championship game, but he was a great piece utilized on their defense. Not the best production in terms of a total tackle standpoint, having 18 total tackles and 2 TFLs in the 2024 season, but he did have 3 interceptions, and he was able to show that he's very productive at the cornerback position and can be utilized great in that defense, in the defensive scheme under a Patrick Graham and a Pete Carroll. Then in the 4th round, drafting a project piece at the offensive line position in the Caleb Rogers, guard out of Texas Tech. And in the 4th round, the Raiders drafted Dante Thornton Jr., wide receiver out of Tennessee, who was a part of that Tennessee squad that made the college football playoff. Not necessarily the most flashiest numbers, having 26 receptions for 661 receiving yards, but like I said, that team overall was pretty talented, making the college football playoffs. And he did average 25.4 yards per reception though, so that can be a really good thing for them. Had 6 receiving touchdowns. He can be another depth piece at the wide receiver position for them. So I just like what they did in the draft overall, and those few picks stand out to me for sure. I did also briefly mention the Las Vegas Raiders offensive line in terms of being potentially elevated by a player like Ashton Jeanty being in the backfield. And according to PFF, going into the 2025 season, they're the 18th ranked offensive line, and they have players like a Colton Miller at the left tackle position, Dylan Parham, who played really solid at left guard last year, and they have right tackle DJ Glaze and Jackson Powers Johnson. So I think that they have a young offensive line that can continue to grow and develop, and that's a good thing for Geno Smith and just their offense overall, because they want to keep quarterback upright to make sure that they have a competent offense, and they're going to need that because they're going to be playing against tough defenses within their own division with the Denver Broncos, who I mentioned in my last season preview. If you haven't checked that out already, go check that out after this. I think that they had the potential to be the best defense in the league. Even the Chiefs, they always have one of the best defenses in the league as well too, and the Chargers had a great season defensively last year too, so you're going to need the Raiders offensive line to be very productive and hold their own against opposing teams that they'll be facing this season in the AFC and just overall in the NFL. And speaking about teams that they play overall in the NFL, this season the Raiders rank smack dab in the middle in terms of their strength of schedule, coming in at 16th in terms of a strength of schedule standpoint. We know that the Broncos, Chargers, and Chiefs are 3 teams within their own division that made the playoffs, but they're playing 6 total teams that made the playoffs in the 2024 season alongside of those 3 teams in their division, but also facing against teams like the Texans, the Eagles, and the Commanders. And they get dealt a tough hand in the first 3 weeks of the season. Week 1 they play against the Patriots, who I think the Patriots, they have the potential to be a wild card in the AFC this year. Mike Vrabel being the head coach of that team, he's shown that he's been able to transform rosters and coaches already when he was the head coach of the Titans, and the type of acquiescence of talent that they've added there in New England. I think that's a tough team to play against in week 1, but Pete Carroll certainly is one of the best coaches in the league and has proven that. So overall, that could be a great matchup on both sides and be a compelling game to watch, but I don't know if they're going to win that one. Then in week 2 they play against the Chargers, albeit though that is at home, so that could be a great thing for them in terms of their home opener under Pete Carroll. In the Pete Carroll era, the first game there in Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium, wouldn't be surprised if they won that, but they got swept by the Chargers in 2024, so I wouldn't be surprised if that happened again this season. In both matchups they play against Los Angeles. Then in week 3 they play against the Commanders, who I think are going to make the playoffs this year. Even though I don't think they're going to win 12 games like last year, I think they're probably going to win 10. I still think that's a tough team for the Raiders to play against. And then let's go into future weeks. The Bears in week 4, they can win that game. The Colts, they can win that game as well too, and the Titans. So you can make the argument that the Raiders could start off 0-3 or 1-2, and then after those 3 games maybe even go 3-0, which would be very solid for that team overall. Then though, after the Titans game, they play against the Chiefs. Always a tough game. The Raiders did beat the Chiefs on Christmas in 2023. That was an amazing game to watch. Their defense had forced Patrick Mahomes to throw the ball 44 times and forced an interception out of Mahomes, also sacking Mahomes 3 times in that game. The Raiders are always a tough opponent for the Chiefs, despite the Chiefs being one of the most dominant teams in NFL history over the past half decade plus. And then even in 2024, the Raiders played the Chiefs tough. They only lost to them in both of their matchups by a touchdown in the first game, losing 27-20 against the Chiefs, and then in the second matchup, losing to them 19-17. So I think we can continue to see a similar element of that. But with that being said, the Chiefs still won 2 games, and I would honestly favor them to do that this year. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders split with them. But moving on further into their schedule, they play the Jaguars. I'm interested to see how improved the Jaguars will be under Liam Cohen and adding players like a Travis Hunter, and how Trevor Lawrence is going to play, because there is a solid amount of pressure on him. But I would favor the Raiders in that game. Broncos, I think the Broncos are going to sweep the Raiders, respectfully. I'm not going to lie. I think the Broncos are one of the most underrated teams in the NFL in terms of how sneaky good they can be this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make the divisional round in this upcoming year. Then they play against the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are going to be improved with a healthy Dak Prescott, adding in George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb. Their defense, once they get this Michael Parsons contract together, I think they're going to be a formidable opponent. But that'll be a great game to watch. Las Vegas, Monday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys at Allegiant Stadium. A lot of great headlines there. And then they play against the Browns. I would favor the Raiders. The Chargers in Los Angeles for a second time in the matchup of the season series will be a tough game. Broncos, again, they're going to get swept, I think, in my opinion, unless unforeseen injuries happens. Then they play against the Eagles, a tough game. The Texans, another tough game. And then in week 17 and 18, they have the Giants in week 17, and then the Chiefs wrapping up things in week 18 of the regular season. You know, this team finished 8-9 2 years ago, and for me, that's the best I can see them doing. Maybe 9 wins, but it's just going to be tough in their division alone. But I think that they're going to have that type of 4 to 5 win improvement because of the personnel that they've added, but the head coach that they've added too. And even from a consultant slash front office standpoint, putting in a competitor, Tom Brady, to have input on the roster and how the team is constructed too, that's a great thing for them. But after finishing 4-13 last year, winning 8-9 games in the 2025 season, that would be improvement. That's literal improvement and a good thing going forward for the team to build on and go into the 2026 season. I just can't see this team realistically making the playoffs because the AFC alone is too tough, and their division is so tough, as we saw last year with 3 teams getting in. And it's certainly possible for 4 teams in a division to make the playoffs. We've seen that before for sure, but that won't be the AFC West in my opinion this year, because I just don't think the Raiders are ready yet. But I've been proven wrong in so many instances in my life, so crazier things have for sure happened. But for the Raiders this year, I just think that their max is winning 8-9 games, being a very tough team to play against, honing in to running the football at a high level, having a defense that's very scrappy and an annoying type of defense to play against under Pete Carroll, but I just cannot see the Raiders making the playoffs this season. But I think that they'll be improved and be a tough out against any team in the 2025 NFL season. With all that out of the way though, let me know in the comments down below, in general, how do you think that the Las Vegas Raiders are going to perform this season in 2025 with their first year of Pete Carroll being the head coach? Y'all let me know. I think that they're going to be a tough team, but I still think that they need more to make the playoffs in this upcoming season, but they're going to be a team that fights every single game all 18 weeks of the season. But y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. That's a wrap on the AFC West division, and now we'll be moving on in the next couple of days to talk about the NFC South, starting off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Looking forward to talking about that team. That's my dad's favorite NFL team. If I ever had a second favorite NFL team, even though I don't necessarily believe in doing that because my team is the Dallas Cowboys, I don't care what y'all say, freak the haters, it would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if I had a second favorite team. So I'm looking forward to talking about that team because I think that they're very talented and love what they've done. I don't want to give away too much about my perspective on the Bucs this season. You'll have to wait till I drop that video, but that's going to be a really good drop as well too. So stay tuned for the NFC South division overall, and then after the NFC South, we'll be talking about the AFC South, and we're getting closer and closer to being done with the season preview series, and we're at the recording of this video 20 days away for the NFL season starting between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday Night Football. That was preview number 16, guys. Stay tuned for more. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe and turn on post notifications. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter /x@SwaggyRuss, at TikTok @SwaggyRuss2. Y'all keep being blessed always. A lot of more great things in the works, guys. And yeah, y'all keep being legendary. Keep Jesus Christ at the center of your life always. You are loved. You are chosen. You have great things to accomplish. Always remember that, guys. Love you all. And y'all have a good one. Peace.